I'm 78 years old. I've survived 78 brutal Chicago winters. I've survived the loss of my husband, I've survived breast cancer, and I survived working double shifts at a diner to put food on the table when times were hard. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepares you for the coldness of your own children. If you are watching this and you have kids you'd take a bullet for, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Because my two beautiful children, the babies I rocked to sleep in this very room, tried to have me declared legally insane so they could steal my home. They tried to lock me in a memory care facility, but they forgot one crucial detail. Their mother isn't losing her mind, and she fights back. My husband Frank and I bought this classic gray stone building in Logan Square back in 1975. Back then it was a rough neighborhood. We paid $40,000 for it. Today, the neighborhood is gentrified. It's full of trendy coffee shops and tech workers. Real estate agents knock on my door every week. Today, my beautiful home is worth roughly $1.5 million. I live in the bottom unit, and I keep the top unit empty for when my grandkids visit. It's a quiet, peaceful life. Or it was. About a year ago, I noticed a shift in my kids. My son David and my daughter Sarah. They started visiting more often. At first I was thrilled, a lonely old woman's dream, right? But the visits weren't about love, they were an audit. It started with little comments. Sarah would come over, look in my fridge and say, "Mom, this milk expired yesterday. Are you sure you're eating okay? You seem confused lately." Or David would find my reading glasses on the coffee table and say, "Mom, you're losing things again. Maybe this big house is just too much for you." They were planting seeds. They were gaslighting me, making me doubt my own mind. I'd leave my keys on the counter and suddenly it was treated like a symptom of dementia. Then the real motive slipped out. Sarah brought over a brochure for a luxury assisted living facility. She used that sweet, condescending voice people use with toddlers. "Mom, we just want you to be safe. We can sell the graystone, use a fraction of the money to pay for your room, and David and I can manage the rest of the estate for you." Manage the rest of the estate. There it was. They wanted the $1.5 million. I told them no, firmly. I said I was perfectly healthy, my mind was sharp as a tack, and I would leave this house in a pine box. But greed makes people ruthless. 2 weeks later, I was looking for a recipe in Sarah's iPad, which she had left on my kitchen table. An email notification popped up on the screen. The subject line made my blood run cold. It read, "Guardianship petition, Margaret. Medical affidavit required." I clicked it. I shouldn't have, but I did. It was an email from a probate lawyer. My children were actively plotting to take me to court, claim I had severe Alzheimer's, strip me of my legal rights, force me into a home, and seize control of my assets. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that screen and I wept. I cried for the babies I had raised. I cried for my late husband, Frank, who broke his back working construction to pay off this mortgage so his family would be safe. I realized in that agonizing moment that I no longer had children. I had vultures waiting for me to stop breathing. They didn't see a mother. they saw a $1.5 million piñata, and they were trying to find the quickest way to break it open. I let myself cry for exactly 1 hour. Then I washed my face, put on my favorite red lipstick, and the tears stopped. Because the Chicago girl in me woke up. You want to play dirty? Fine, let's play. The next morning, I didn't call my kids. I called Saul. Saul is a 75-year-old estate lawyer who operates out of a dusty office downtown. He's a shark in a cheap suit. I walked into his office, slapped a printout of that email on his desk, and said, "Saul, my kids are trying to put me in a cage. Make sure they never see a single dime of Frank's money." Saul and I went to work. We didn't just build a wall, we built a fortress. First, to completely destroy their guardianship plan, I went to 3 separate, independent, board-certified neurologists. I took every cognitive test in the book. I passed with flying colors. I had 3 notarized medical affidavits declaring me 100% mentally competent. But that wasn't enough. I needed to remove the prize. I needed to make sure the piñata was empty. With Saul's help, I set up an Irrevocable Generation-Skipping Trust. I transferred the ownership of the $1.5 million Greystone completely out of my name and into the trust. Who are the beneficiaries? My 4 grandchildren, not my kids. The grandkids get the money when they turn 25 to pay for college or buy a home. David and Sarah were legally bypassed, completely cut out of the bloodline. And to make sure they couldn't touch the property, the trust immediately sold the building to a private real estate firm. The millions went straight into the untouchable trust. But wait, where do I live? That's the genius part. Before the sale, Saul negotiated a life lease. The new owners legally cannot evict me. I live in my beautiful bottom unit, rent-free, with the property taxes and maintenance completely paid for by the new owners until the day I die. I am untouchable. My grandkids are set for life, and my children are left with nothing but their own greed. I didn't tell them a thing. I waited. A month later, Thanksgiving rolled around. They came over to my house. David brought a turkey. Sarah brought her fake smiles. After dinner, they sat me down in the living room. David looked nervous. Sarah looked like a predator. "Mom," David said, pulling a thick manila envelope out of his briefcase, "we need to talk about your living situation. We've spoken to a doctor and a lawyer. We are filing for conservatorship. It's for your own good. We're going to list the house next week." I looked at them. I didn't yell. I just reached into my cardigan pocket, pulled out a smaller envelope, and tossed it on the coffee table. I said, "You can try to list it, David, but the new owners might have a problem with that." They froze. Sarah picked up the envelope. Inside were copies of the 3 neurological evaluations, the deed of sale, and the summary of the Irrevocable Trust. I watched the blood drain from their faces as they read the documents. I watched them realize that their $1.5 million payday had vanished into thin air. I watched them realize that their confused, fragile mother had legally outmaneuvered them in a way they couldn't reverse if they tried. Sarah started crying, real tears this time. "Mom, you gave our inheritance away? You cut us out?" I stood up. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You tried to steal my freedom, Sarah. I just secured my legacy. You don't have a mother anymore, and you certainly don't have a bank. Get out of my house." They left. That was 6 months ago. I haven't heard from them since, and honestly, good riddance. If you are a senior watching this, please listen to Margaret. Gaslighting is real. Elder abuse isn't always physical. Sometimes it wears a suit and calls you mom. Do not wait until your mind is actually failing to protect your assets. Secure your estate, get an aggressive lawyer, and never, ever let your children treat you like a burden they are eager to cash out. If you are watching this and you refuse to let anyone treat you like an ATM waiting to expire, go down to the comments right now. I want you to type 3 words, "Not your ATM." Write it down. Let's show the world that our generation still has teeth. Stay strong, protect yourself, and never surrender your castle.